Welcome to This Explainer. I'm honestly so glad you're joining me today because we're about to embark on a truly profound journey together. Today, we're exploring a deeply personal and, well, often completely unseen reality of complex trauma, resilience, and survival. And to help us navigate all of this, we're going to follow a really unique guide straight from our source material. Enter the Blue Dragon. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A cute blue dragon? That sounds like a character from a children's storybook. But as we're going to see, this dragon actually represents a very real, lived experience. It's literally a map of how a developing mind survived the unsurvivable. So we're going to gently unpack the truth behind a condition that frankly gets completely misunderstood. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. Consider this really powerful realization from our source. We are not a singular I, as we had always thought, but we in being a plural person. Just think about that for a second. Right? Most of us just go through life experiencing ourselves as one continuous singular identity. But our blue dragon here, it isn't just one creature. It's actually a beautiful, intricate system of 12 distinct parts that all share one single life. And what's wild is that for most of their life, this person didn't even know they were a system. They just dealt with these huge gaps in their memory and sudden personality shifts that no single diagnosis could quite explain. That is, until a specialist finally revealed this extraordinary truth. They weren't an I, they were a we. Now, what's absolutely fascinating here is how this completely redefines what we think we know. We're talking about dissociative identity disorder, or DID, and let's be clear, this is not a disorder of imagination. No way. It is a brilliant, literally life-saving adaptation by a developing human mind. You see, when an incredibly young child faces severe, repeated trauma happening while the brain is literally still forming, the mind does something just remarkable to survive. Instead of integrating into one single sense of self, it compartmentalizes. It actively creates separate parts to hold the unbearable memories, the overwhelming emotions, and to handle those day-to-day roles. It's essentially the ultimate internal shield, custom-built to protect the core self from things a child just cannot process alone. And this brilliantly illustrates a massive gap between, say, Hollywood and reality. Society, mostly driven by movies and sensationalized media, right, tends to think DID is frightening or dangerous or full of these theatrical switches just for attention. But our research completely shatters that myth. In reality, DID is incredibly quiet. It's this deeply internal, highly protective, and incredibly vulnerable reality. A part isn't some made-up fantasy character. It's a distinct compartment of the self that bravely stepped up when things were profoundly unsafe. So people living with DID, they aren't dangerous. In fact, it's the exact opposite. Their condition is the direct result of them being highly vulnerable to the danger of others. Let's look a little closer at the Blue Dragon system itself. 12 parts, one dragon. It's kind of like a giant puzzle where every piece matters. These parts actually formed during very specific developmental stages, reflecting the exact age they needed to come into existence to protect the system. Every single one has a real, distinct identity and a really crucial purpose. You've got some parts carrying the heavy, traumatic memories, others acting as organizers who just observe, and some are the creators. But oh man, the detail that is just both heartbreaking and beautiful is the youngest part of the system. Because she formed so incredibly early, literally before the child even learned how to speak, she communicates completely without words. She speaks somatically, entirely through the physical body. So I want you to try and imagine, just for a second, the sheer patience and curiosity it takes to live this reality every single day. Navigating life as a system is intensely complex. I mean, it often means losing hours of time and having absolutely no clue where they went. Imagine finding notes you've written or realizing you completed tasks at work with zero memory of doing them, simply because another part was fronting or taking the wheel. It means sudden, unpredictable shifts in emotions, physical abilities, or even jumping from an adult's voice to a child's voice. And all the while, behind the scenes, there's this constant stream of internal conversations. They're continuously making agreements and figuring out how to support each other while sharing one single body. Now, you might be wondering, if all this is happening, how on earth does it go unnoticed? Well, the Blue Dragon was actually a covert system for decades. The human mind is so incredibly good at its job that this system worked entirely behind the scenes. It was so successful at hiding that even the host individual had no idea what was going on. And why? Because absolute survival depended on it. In a deeply unsafe environment, the system had to appear totally fine. It literally hid the parts of their personality that abusers or even just society would find intolerable. So DID stays hidden because, at its core, it's a mechanism of extreme undercover protection. But what happens when the immediate danger has finally passed, and this system has to navigate life today? Well, the emotional toll is just immensely heavy. Living as a system right now requires a profound amount of self-compassion. Some parts of the system are just utterly exhausted. Some are actively grieving the safe childhood they never got to have. Others still feel incredibly small, alone, and carry decades of old fear or anger. And then you have parts that simply just want the chance to rest, or to finally just play. And they're trying to navigate all of this while facing harsh societal misunderstandings, the loss of relationships, and a really severe lack of specialist support. They truly just have to take it one day at a time. So, the absolutely crucial point here is understanding how the very systems meant to help can actually, sometimes, cause harm. Because DID involves severe early relational trauma, usually with caregivers who are frightening or just totally unavailable. Therapy isn't just about talking. It is often the very first time these protective parts have ever experienced a safe attachment. So if a client builds that profound, fragile trust, but the therapy model is based on a strict, fixed timeline rather than what the client actually needs, the results can be devastating. When therapy abruptly ends simply because time is up, these vulnerable parts feel completely abandoned all over again. It effectively replicates their deepest childhood wounds, and it can send the entire system straight into shutdown and profound grief. This means that true, meaningful healing for a DID system requires a totally different approach. Therapy absolutely requires safe attachment and real continuity of care. The mental health services out there often seriously underestimate the risk of abrupt endings. People living with dissociative disorders need long-term needs-based support. They need to know for sure that the safety they're finally feeling isn't going to just be suddenly ripped away from them. And, if a change in therapist absolutely has to happen because life is unpredictable, it needs to be handled with incredible care, super clear planning, and really gentle shared handovers. Now, I know you might be thinking this is an incredibly rare 1 in a million condition, but check this out. Current research suggests that about 1.5% of the general population has a dissociative disorder. That might sound like a tiny slice of the pie, but to put that into perspective, that actually makes dissociative disorders more common than schizophrenia. Wrap your head around that. Yet, despite being that prevalent, it remains tragically misunderstood, deeply under-researched, and so isolating for the people who live with it. There are so many people living for years knowing something is different inside them, but they just lack the language or a safe environment to finally name it. Let's move over to see how all of these experiences interlock, because this really builds a complete picture of the lived experience. None of these conditions exist in a vacuum. They form what our source beautifully calls woven truths. For our blue dragon, their autism meant their sensory world was incredibly intense right from the start, and that directly shaped how they experienced the trauma. That trauma then shaped exactly how the DID system formed to protect them. And today, chronic illness means their body physically carries all of those old emotional wounds. You literally cannot separate the intense sensory world, the physical reactions, and those separate protective parts. It's not chaos. It is a highly structured, intricate map of survival. If you only take away one single thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this. DID is not a failure. It is the absolute, unquestionable brilliance of a child's mind adapting under totally impossible conditions. It's a testament to the sheer human will to survive. Unseen conditions are intensely real. The trauma that people endure gets held tightly, not just in the mind, but deep in the physical body. And the fact that this developing mind could construct a covert 12-part system to literally shield a child from the unsurvivable, listen, that is not brokenness. That is an act of sheer, profound brilliance. As we wrap up our journey with the Blue Dragon today, I want to leave you with this final thought. DID is survival. It's a beautiful, hard-fought victory over unimaginable circumstances. The author of our source text actually wrote this to remind themselves that their voice matters, even after years and years of being misunderstood or dismissed. So I'll ask you, if any part of this story, of hidden struggles, of fighting to be truly seen, or of adapting to survive resonates with you, does your voice matter too? Absolutely it does. Thank you so much for being here, for witnessing this reality, and for walking alongside the Blue Dragon with us today.